All right, everyone, we're live. Damn, looks like my signal's a bit weak. So sorry about that. Hopefully it should come back soon. But today we are going to be live reacting to another video by Natalie Fulton. So she's put out two interesting bits of content recently. One was the Name the Trait video, which I reacted to recently. Today we're going to live react to a video of hers called 7 Arguments Vegans Need to Stop Making. So let me just go onto that now. We'll get that up on the screen. Share screen. This is the one. All right. Hopefully peeps can see that. And yeah, we're going to play the video and react now. So usually, obviously, vegan YouTubers, we tend to do videos arguing about very bad carnist arguments against the vegan position. But we often don't self-reflect and actually examine our own arguments good enough. So this could be a good exercise in doing that. And we'll see whether or not I agree with Natalie's points in this video. All right, let's go.
I've heard every terrible anti-vegan argument in the book, and I've debunked most of them here. But today I wanted to do something different. What are the terrible pro-vegan arguments that I wish people would stop using? Just to clarify, I'm not saying that you have to stop using these or that you should never use them. I'm just explaining why I don't like them and what I think you should say instead. When I was in high school, there was one annoying vegetarian named Brian. Now, he wasn't annoying because he was vegetarian. He was annoying for other reasons and happened to be vegetarian. One day, he decided to challenge me and he said, "You can't kill an animal yourself, so why pay someone else to do it?" I remember thinking then, when I was 15 years old, that this was a stupid argument. I easily debunked it by saying, first of all, he doesn't know that I can't kill an animal. I've never tried. Maybe I could do it. Maybe I couldn't. It would be impossible to know because I haven't tried. Then I told him there were many things in my life that I paid for but couldn't do myself. I can't make shirts, but I pay someone to make shirts. And I also told him that he can't grow his
All right, so my first point of contention with this bit is that's a bit of equivocation going on there. So what's happening there is when we use the word can't, her annoying vegetarian friend from school, Brian, what he meant by can't is you don't have the guts to do it. He's saying you don't have it within you to do this thing. So is this really consistent with your own moral values? When we're not talking about ability and stuff when we say that. Obviously, there's loads of things we can't do because we don't have the skill to do. We don't have the ability to do. Like I can't play football to a to a professional level, but I like to watch football, right? But when we're talking about killing and eating animals, it's about is this actually in line with your values? Now, there is one point of contention, is what I just said. People could talk about, I don't know, like surgery, like, you know, that's squeamish or something, and you wouldn't be able to do that because of the blood and gore, whatever. You wouldn't like seeing that, but yet you support that happening to you. But that's not the actual the ethical side of things. So what Brian was saying here was nothing to do with, I don't think, if we're being charitable to him and to us as vegans when we use that argument. When we say can't, we just mean, are you not being a hypocrite for doing this? Like, look at you. You're someone who actually cares about animals, cares about violence. Why would you be violating your own principles that you have?
own vegetables, but he pays other people to do that. Now that I'm no longer 15, I have even better ways to debunk this ridiculous argument. The idea that the morality of an action is determined by whether or not the person committing the crime is okay with it is absolutely bonkers. Imagine you were explaining that murder is wrong and you said, "Thou shan't murder because thou couldn't do it to yourself." It may be true that most people wouldn't have the ability to murder someone, but that's not why murder is wrong. Murder is
Yeah, I agree with that bit. So, yeah, I think if we can examine the morality of an action dependent on whether someone could do it for sure. So maybe I agree with that.
wrong because you're taking someone's life away from them. You're violating their most fundamental right and creating suffering all around.
I can't see any comments today, guys, in the live chat. I don't know what's happening there. Is it just that, like, is something going on, or is it that, I don't know. Can someone comment and see if there's... Yeah, I'm not getting any comments showing up on my thing. Hold on, let me just... Okay, all right, we've got one. All right, that's fine. It's just that no one had commented yet. Sorry, usually comments are flooding in like right from the start. Okay, right, let's carry on.
That Jeffrey Dahmer feels comfortable raping and murdering, therefore rape and murder is okay. What? In the same way, buying animal products is wrong because you're violating the animal's rights and creating suffering for them. Whether or not you'd be okay with it has nothing to do with the morality of that action. Is hunting okay because hunters kill the animals they eat? All that being said, I do know some people who are vegan or vegetarian because of that argument, and I understand the point vegans are trying to make, which is that paying someone to kill baby animals for you is fucking pathetic. Well, I personally hate this argument because it falls apart under the slightest logical scrutiny. I do recognize that it appears to be effective. First of all,
yeah, that's correct. I mean, we can like examine and poke holes in arguments and think whether or not it's perfect, but ultimately I do think that argument does work to some extent.
we are not the only species that breastfeeds from another species. Here's a picture of a baby pig breastfeeding from a dog after her mother rejected.
Okay, so we're on to the next argument now about humans are the only species that breastfeed from other species. Now, this is interesting. Natalie's about to say this isn't actually true anyway, so let's have a look at this.
Rejected her. There's also a dog who nursed baby tigers. I understand these are rare cases and animals don't go around regularly breastfeeding from each other, especially not when they're adults, but dogs also consume dairy too. Starbucks even created the puppuccino, which is when you go to the drive-thru, they give you some whipped cream to give to your dog. And people complain about feeding a dog a healthy plant-based diet when they're giving their dogs whipped cream. That's insane. The main reason I hate this argument is because humans are the only species that does many, many things. We're the only species that builds rocket ships, that writes sitcoms, that jerks off to tentacle porn. I mean, maybe octopus do that. I don't know.
Do you know that humans are the only animal that drink the milk of other animals? You know what else only people do?
Rogan.
Fly planes.
All right, yeah, so I understand why this would definitely be a bad argument to make, the whole humans are the only species that drinks milk of another species, if we're just talking about it from the perspective of, oh, look how like ridiculous it is that we're doing that. But from an actual nutrition perspective, I think this is actually important. The point is the dairy industry has sold people this insane lie that people have lapped up. People actually think that we need to drink the milk of another species. And in reality, that is it's as ridiculous to say that humans need cow milk as it is to say that rats need to drink rhino milk, or hippos need to drink chimp milk, or whales. Yes, whales produce milk because they're mammals. Whales need to drink giraffe milk. Can anyone not just see that these would be utterly absurd claims? So that's where I think this argument coming in is actually very useful. When we're talking to people who are conditioned by this ridiculous dairy propaganda, I think then it's useful to say humans are actually the only species that drinks the milk of another species. So from the nutritional, if we're debunking the nutritional point, then I think it's actually an excellent thing to say.
Make movies, call each other on the phone and tell each other how awesome milk is. What the fuck kind of goofy ass point is that?
When your argument makes it into Joe Rogan's stand-up routine, you know it's bullshit. Next, this is something you hear at Cubes when meat eaters don't want to watch the cruelty they're funding.
If it's not good enough for your eyes, then why is it good enough for your stomach? Damn, this is going to hurt me a little bit to hear this one, Natalie, because I love this argument. So let's hear this. Also, a point. I think it would be helpful in this video if Natalie flashed those arguments up on the screen for just that little bit longer, because they come a bit like quickly, but that's fine.
Understand why this argument is popular because it highlights the hypocrisy of non-vegans being unable to stomach what they literally put into their stomachs. However, I think this argument misses a bigger point, which is that watching slaughterhouse footage is unpleasant and eating meat is enjoyable. I mean, not for vegans who know where it comes from, but
it doesn't miss that point. You're saying, why is it good enough for your stomach? Because obviously carnists think that it's good enough because it tastes good. So when we say, why is it good enough for your stomach? We're saying there's something that they're missing there. It's like, it's good enough for me to go, oh, yum, yum, this is lovely, but I can't even bear to watch it happen. But anyway, maybe there's some more flaws in this argument.
but carnists love it. They get the benefits of animal slaughter without having to deal with it psychologically, so why would they want to? However, my main problem with this argument is that you're forgetting the actual victims, the animals.
How is it forgetting the actual victims? I guess what Natalie's about to say now is perhaps it's very human-centric, saying, oh, it's not good enough for me, I don't like to see it. But the reason we don't like to see it is because we care, because it's our empathy kicking in. It's saying, damn, that horrific thing is happening to someone and I don't want to be in their position. It's not just like a gore thing. It's not like, oh, there's blood and guts, you know, like watching a surgery. It's that we actually see that evil happening there. It's like seeing someone be assaulted in the street or something like that. We suddenly get an empathetic response to seeing that. Anyway, when it was Gary Yourofsky who I first heard say this, and I found this an extremely convincing point. So I'm not fully convinced that Natalie is correct here when she say this is something that vegans should stop saying. I think this thing actually turned a lot of people, including me, probably vegan.
Framing the flesh as not being good enough for the meat eater, when instead we should be focusing on the harm it causes to the animals. When people refuse to watch footage, I prefer to say this: if you won't watch it, how is it fair for you to pay for animals to go through it?
Here's a critical comment here for Natalie. Sorry, Natalie, you're going to read these comments back. I think Natalie's video is detrimental to the cause because it just made me feel slightly defeated. Well, listen, Kerry, don't feel defeated by it. Feel inspired by it, because all we're doing is we're just examining our own arguments, and all we're doing is saying, how can we improve? How can we make it better? That said, yeah, I guess it's going to be weird when you come into a video like Natalie's and you've got all these arguments that you regularly use, and then she just shoots them all down, right? So if you use all these arguments, yeah, maybe you'll watch Natalie's video and be like, shit. And it might make you feel that little bit deflated in the moment. But don't worry, this is part and parcel of a justice movement. We've always got to examine and critique how we do stuff. And if you disagree, you're free to disagree and tell Natalie why you believe that she's wrong, which is what I'm doing in this video. I'm going to say whether I believe that Natalie is right or wrong about each of these points.
This centers the animals and reminds carnists that they should have to watch something they're literally paying for someone else to go through. Sometimes I see vegans who I know for a fact...
All right, I'm going to pause. I'm going to try and pause the video when these things flash up on the screen, because Natalie's talking as it kind of just flashes up, and then I think some people might miss what that argument is.
Or atheist.
So disingenuous arguments is the next one. Disingenuous arguments.
It's making Christian arguments, and it just makes me cringe.
All right, so atheists making Christian arguments and stuff like that. Yeah, now this is something I kind of do. So I'm happy to reflect on this about whether this is right. But the reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to appeal to them. I'm not going to be able to change someone out of their religion. So if they're examining things from a Christian worldview, I kind of want to appeal to them. Ultimately, I understand that that's kind of wrong, because the reasons to not murder animals should be because it's wrong for the victim to be murdered. I don't really want to be talking about God. But the point is they don't care about that, and I just don't really have a good workaround a lot of the time. That said, perhaps Natalie is going to provide a solution for this. So let's hear what she has to say.
I understand that it's important to meet people where they're at, but you can do that without lying to them. I would never make the argument that the devil is more likely to have created slaughterhouses, because I don't believe in the devil.
But they do. And I don't know. Yeah, it is kind of course, it's disingenuous, I guess, when we say it, but not that disingenuous. As long as you're not saying that you believe in that, as long as you frame it to be like, look, who do you think would be more likely to do this? I think these arguments can be effective, but yeah.
Just as absurd as me arguing that Harry Potter would be vegan. Hermione, though, really should be vegan, and it's honestly insane that she's not.
And what about if there was like a Harry Potter religion, though? And, 2 or 3 billion people in the world were Potterarians. And it was written into their book as like some kind of fact that killing animals is okay because Dumbledore says so. I don't know. Maybe you would want to say something like, where in the Harry Potter films does Dumbledore kill an animal? Or yeah, carrying on.
I mean, all that stuff with the house elves and she's torturing animals 3 times a day, it just makes no sense. But I consider the Bible to be fiction.
Yeah, so Samuel says, I agree with George. The alternative is to argue the existence of God most of the time. Yeah, so when you start saying to a religious person, well, yeah, but that's just a load of nonsense, whatever, I don't believe that myself, then you just devolve into a theology debate, and we don't really have time for that. It might just be quicker to talk to them about how their religion does not mandate the mass murder of animals, and how the true values of their religion would teach this and that and that. But yeah.
So me using the Bible to argue for veganism would be absurd. That being said, if you are religious, use all the religious arguments that you want. The point is that you have to be honest with yourself and the person you're talking to. It's like when you go home for Christmas and your uncle, who only eats Popeyes and McDonald's, tells you that a vegan diet is unhealthy.
This is an interesting comment again from Samuel. It's more effective to guide people through their own moral framework than to impose your own onto them. And that's what's good about Name the Trait as well, eh, Natalie? Just joking.
You just can't take it seriously. Anytime a vegan is making an argument that they don't really believe, the non-vegan can sense it and it will discredit the vegan. Think about this.
How do we know this, though? Like, because I have never, ever been told this by a carnist who I'm arguing with. That I've never had, like, I don't know, a Muslim on the street say, well, yeah, but I can sense that you don't even believe in that, so I'm not going to care. Like, usually if I've had a good conversation with a Muslim on the street and I've made them think about certain, I don't know, I've mentioned to them parts of the Quran or the Hadith where the Prophet Muhammad says that you'll be rewarded for sparing the lives of animals, which there are actually several hadiths where he says that. I've never heard one say, well, you don't believe that, because they don't care if I don't believe it. They're actually like, oh, yeah, damn, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't think about that hadith, actually. That's in obviously the easier questions, arguments, debates on the street. Conversations that I've had with Muslims. Some of them can just be like banging your head against a brick wall, as they can be with anyone. But I'm not sure I'm convinced on Natalie's point that, you know, the bystander will tell that you don't believe in it and so they don't care.
A salesperson who's trying to sell a product that they don't believe in. The customers can sense it and are less likely to buy.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this, because we all know that sales and corporate stuff is kind of a load of BS. It's like when you go think about job interviews, right? You know, someone goes in for a job interview. I am passionate about working for Sainsbury's because I want to deliver the best customer service possible, and I really know that my life goal is to be serving customers every day. I want to wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. and get out there on that shop floor and just serve customers all day. That's what I want to do, and I'm sure that I will turn over the best profits for you because this is my passion. Now, the interviewer knows that that's absolute bullshit. No one's passion is this. Everyone would just rather be at home watching TV or going on holiday or doing whatever they want. But there has to be a certain level of, I'm getting kind of lost for where I was now, but basically I'm not sure I agree with that point that Natalie just made.
People ask me about outreach. One thing I always emphasize is being true to yourself. Since we don't have data on what works during outreach, it makes sense to do what's honest for you and keeps you doing outreach. If you're naturally more aggressive, be more aggressive during outreach. If you're a bit more soft-spoken, then roll with that. Don't try to be someone else because it's unsustainable and it will burn you out. Every time I debunk appeals to nature with Cardis, the vegans...
Okay, yeah. Now, this one can be used in context, but I'll come to that in a minute. But overall, very bad argument. Eating meat is unnatural. If you're using that as an actual ethical argument against what's happening to animals, this is a terrible, terrible, terrible argument. Please do not do this. we'll hear what Natalie has to say, and then I'll jump in with where I think this can be used in certain contexts.
Jump in with their own version. You'll hear vegans say that we're herbivores and eating meat is unnatural. And honestly, I'm not sure what definition of natural they're using. To me, natural just means something that happens in nature. Although we have somewhat separated ourselves from.
Yeah, I want to define what I mean by natural. Yeah, either something that happens in nature or something that is not human made. So if something is not human made, that is natural or human sourced or whatever. So basically, hunting and foraging would be natural, but hunting would only be natural if we actually did this like with our own hands. I would even say hunting with guns and stuff is not natural because you're using an invention there. You're using like a human made tool to actually do that. No one can naturally kill a deer from half a mile away. That is what I think I would define. I think that the dictionary definition of natural last time I looked was just something that is not man-made. But yeah.
From the natural world, we can see that our ancestors in nature did eat animals. In fact, they drove most megafauna toward extinction in order to feast on their corpses. If vegans want to argue that the meat industry today is unnatural, I completely agree. Animals are artificially bred, genetically modified, confined, and slaughtered by giant machines at a fraction of their natural lifespan. There is nothing about industrial animal agriculture that resembles anything close to what we would see in nature. However, that's not the argument vegans typically make. They'll come in with sources about how we're herbivores, and the point I'm making is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether we're omnivores, herbivores, or frugivores when you're talking about morality. And since most people consider us omnivorous, getting into biology is a waste of time. Just
yeah, and the other thing I want to say here is it's 2023, no one eats in a natural way. Our whole civilization is unnatural. I'm sitting here on YouTube broadcasting to an audience, right? That we're all thousands of miles away from each other. We're literally sitting across the world from each other. Everything I ate today is unnatural. It was sourced using machinery and tools and put together in factories and put in packaging and put in a supermarket, and it had a barcode on it that you beep with a laser that uses this thing called money, this currency that we have. That's none of this is natural. The way non-vegans eat, the way vegans eat in this day and age is not natural. So that is where I think it's only within context, it can be good to say, well, eating meat is not natural, whatever. You can say to that person, well, your diet isn't natural either. But even if it was, that wouldn't matter. So you can say to the person, look, neither you nor I eat in a natural way. You eat man-made animals, fed supplements and all this different feed, and these animals are bred via artificial selection. So it's in the name, right, of the type of animals that these are. These animals that they eat are inventions. So they're bred via artificial insemination and are artificially selected to have certain traits that produce eggs or milk or meat for us. And yeah, this is ultimately how we source our food in this day and age. It's through means of technology and civilization. It's via completely unnatural sources, whoever we are.
Debunk the appeal to nature and move on. Don't roll around in the mud trying to use biology to justify your decision making.
Yes, if vegans say that carnists shouldn't appeal to nature, this is a fallacy, right? The appeal to nature fallacy. So if a carnist, we're always ripping on carnists for saying stuff like, oh, go tell a lion, or, it happens in nature and blah, blah, blah. But then vegans themselves will literally start an argument by saying, did you know that eating meat goes against our nature? Did you know that this is not natural? Who cares?
This sounds nice, and there is some evidence that we can absorb.
Yeah, okay. This as well, a bad argument. I've heard a lot of like spiritual vegans use, and even spiritual non-vegans. When I'm speaking to people on the streets and they're quite a spiritual person, they will say, yeah, but then when you think about it, yeah, if you're eating these, factory farmed animals and stuff, you're taking on their suffering. And, we wonder why we're so angry and violent as a society. It's because we're eating these products of violence, and like that violence and suffering is getting transmitted into us, and their negative energy is like infecting us or whatever. Yeah, this is an anti-science argument. But let's hear what Natalie has to say on this.
Cortisol from animals that are stressed. But other than that, we need to steer clear of spiritual claims. If you say that someone can absorb the animal's stress, they can turn around and say they can absorb the animal's strength. They can even say it's karma the cow was killed because they could be a reincarnated serial killer.
I believe in that whole entire karma reincarnation, and like, what if that's some piece of shit serial
Oh dear, they haven't thought through the mathematics of this one, have they? I mean, let's just listen to what this guy has to say.
killer that's reincarnated in a cow, and that's the way that he deserves to be, and like,
We want to keep our argument.
So we're breeding like we're mass murdering 55 billion land animals every single year, and then like 2-something trillion marine animals, and somehow bad humans, the few evil billion humans who have existed throughout history, are now being reincarnated into these trillions of animals being massacred. Yeah, they really haven't thought through the maths of that one.
Arguments grounded in reality, and using these spiritual arguments makes vegans seem out of touch. Veganism already has a hippie, crunchy granola image, and playing into that harms our message. It's also too focused on the human. You're saying harming animals is wrong because it harms the human? Really? That's not why we fight for animal rights. We fight against animal abuse because it harms the animals, not because it makes humans sad. There are many vegan cults which use this idea of animal products as being impure to promote their religious message. Veganism is already considered a weird cult by many people, and using spiritual claims propagates this myth. Veganism rests on the idea that animals are sentient and we don't need to eat them, so let's leave it at that.
Yeah, agreed. Now, what if you just cannot change someone's spiritual beliefs, though? I guess this is going back to the argument that Natalie said is bad a few arguments back about disingenuous argumentation. Like, if someone genuinely believes all this stuff, then there's just no chance of taking them out of their spiritual kind of belief system. Can you kind of just try and make common ground with them and just say, well, yeah, look, if you do believe in that, it would make sense to say, that you take on this suffering and violence and blah, blah, blah.
I know. It's really hypocritical for me to hate on this argument because
you can't love animals and eat them too. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. Firstly, I guess it shouldn't be about whether or not we love animals. I don't love humans, but that doesn't mean I can go around killing them. But if I did say I loved humans, and yet I was basically Hitler towards humans, rounding them up and massacring them, would that not sound a bit stupid, a bit hypocritical? So let's carry on.
Because I've used it so many times and continue to use it when I advocate to university students. But the more I interact with this line of thinking, the less I like it, and here is why. Well, I don't think I really loved animals before I went vegan. I know many meat eaters who love animals more than any vegan I've ever met. I had this one friend who couldn't walk down the street without saying hi to every dog. She spent her free time volunteering and dog and cat rescues, and you could say, oh, she only cared about pets, but she was always watching videos of cute animals and talking about how much she loved them. It was really clear to me that she did love animals deeply.
Did she love them deeply, or did she find them extremely cute? To go back to the whole Hitler analogy, Hitler might have found the babies that he killed cute in some way, but he didn't love them. Sorry, that's a really weird argument, but it's just weird when you put it in the human. It's still, when you put it in the human context. I don't know, Natalie, did your friend who was massacring these animals, did she love those animals, or did she just find them cute? There must be a difference here.
And she also ate meat. The reason she ate meat was because she liked the taste and she was so disconnected from the process and didn't even really think about how it had come from a living, breathing animal. I also
Yeah, that's true. There is just a massive disconnect there. It could perhaps be possible that someone does love these farmed animals, but eats them because they just have this massive disconnect. But I think once the connect is there, if they truly love animals, then should love those animals, then that's going to be a weird way about, proving that love.
dislike this argument because of other arguments I've disliked in this video. It focuses too much on the meat eaters and not on the animals. Being vegan has nothing to do with loving animals. It has to do with justice. I know plenty of vegans who don't love animals, but they still don't think they should be tortured for a sandwich. We need to point out to meat eaters that animals deserve rights, whether they care about them or not. Chickens don't deserve rights because some people might love them. They deserve rights because they're conscious and cognizant individuals who have a vested interest in not being tortured. Whether meat eaters love them or not is irrelevant. I also think it's unfair to tell someone how they feel. If there's one thing we can't argue against, it's another person's feelings. A couple months ago,
well, at the same time, it's important that we examine our own beliefs. A lot of us do walk around and say stuff that maybe we don't even truly believe in. Perhaps I was one of those as a non-vegan. I was saying, I care about this and I care about that. And then maybe I wasn't because I knew, maybe I didn't because I knew that slaughter existed. I knew that animals had to be murdered in order to make this food for me, this clothing for me, whatever it was. So ultimately, we still have to examine whether we truly believe in the things that we're actually saying, because a lot of people are just paying lip service to these things and they actually kid themselves into believing it. But then when you point out flaws in their reasoning, if they're receptive, they might actually go, damn, do you know what? You're right about that. It doesn't make sense that I did say this.
a vegan asked me if this argument is just an ad hominem, and I kind of think that it is. As vegans, we hate ad hominems. I hate when someone tells me they can eat meat because I have a cell phone. So we shouldn't be using ad hominems if we don't want them to be used.
I don't think that's an ad hominem. I think that's a tu quoque. A tu quoque fallacy is when you say, oh yeah, well, you do this. And if this person doesn't live in complete consistency with that position, then that means the entire position falls apart. That would be a tu quoque fallacy rather than ad hominem. An ad hominem would be an insult. So an ad hominem would be like, you're a soy boy beta or something like that as an argument against vegans. But yeah.
All this being said, I do know a few people who went vegan because someone told them that they can't love
Faraz Harsini on the screen there. Go and check him out. Very good vegan activist and a medical professional as well.
Animals and eat them too. So this is another case of an argument that I personally don't find logical, but appears to be effective. I hope this video didn't piss too many people off, and if it did, let me know why in the comments. If you want to support my work, please join.
All right, yeah. So it was only going to be a pretty short live stream today because it was a pretty short video from Natalie. But ultimately, I was just giving my feedback and stuff on that. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching along, and don't know what you make of my feedback on that video. And I'll see what Natalie has to say about those things as well. But ultimately, just wanted to make this quick live stream to try and generate some conversation about the type of arguments that we're often using and examine whether or not they're good enough, because we've always got to be sharpening the tools. We've always got to be improving our outreach skills and how we advocate effectively for animals. So, yeah, I will leave you all to enjoy the rest of your days. And yeah, thank you everyone in the chat for watching along this short live stream. And thank you, Natalie, for making that video. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days. Cheers, everyone.